6 days. That is all that stands between an uneasy ceasefire and the resumption of strikes that could reshape the Middle East, spike global oil prices, and send shockwaves through every economy on Earth. And right now, every signal, military, economic, diplomatic, is pointing in exactly one direction. If you want to understand what is actually happening behind the headlines, stay with me, because the official story and the real story are not the same thing. The ceasefire was never built to last. It was built to look like it was built to last. And that distinction between a genuine attempt at peace and a performance of one is the only thing that matters in the next 6 days. Drop a comment right now. Do you think this ceasefire survives May 17th? Not what you hope, what you actually think. I'll come back to your answers. Here is what the timeline actually reveals. Friday, the United States sends Iran a written proposal through Swiss intermediaries in Geneva. Secretary of State Marco Rubio calls it a comprehensive framework for ending hostilities. Sunday, Iran's Supreme National Security Council meets for 11 hours straight, 9 in the morning to 8 at night, Tehran time, then sends their counterproposal back through the same Swiss channel. Sunday night, President Trump reads Iran's response. By midnight, he has publicly rejected it. 4 words, all caps, totally unacceptable. Monday morning, Rose Garden, prepared statement, no press questions. The ceasefire we agreed to 3 weeks ago is now on life support. Life support. That is not the language of negotiation. That is the language of a doctor preparing a family for what comes next. From proposal to public rejection in under 48 hours. A ceasefire that cost 6 days of bombing and thousands of casualties, discarded in the time between a Friday and a Monday. That speed is information. It tells you the gap between positions is either enormous, or the rejection was always the destination, and the proposal was the formality that preceded it. So what did each side actually demand? Iran wanted the immediate lifting of every sanction imposed since 2017. Not gradual relief, not a phased timeline, all of it gone on day one. Every sanction from Trump's first-term maximum pressure campaign, every sanction Biden added after the Natanz incident, every sanction imposed 3 weeks ago after Iranian missiles struck Haifa. Iran also declared its ballistic missile program entirely off the table. Washington had asked for a 5-year freeze on missiles exceeding 1,200 kilometers in range. Tehran's written response, according to an official who reviewed it, called that demand non-negotiable. And then there is the nuclear question. Iran offered to cap uranium enrichment at 60%. That sounds like a compromise. Here is why it is not. 60% is exactly where Iran sits today, according to the IAEA's April 29th inspection report. Iran offered to keep doing precisely what it is already doing. Washington wanted a rollback to 20%, the level specified in the original nuclear deal. The gap between 60 and 20 is not a negotiating distance, it is a chasm. And then came the demand that no American president can legally fulfill. Written guarantees that no future administration can reimpose sanctions. Congress controls sanctions law. A president cannot bind future Congresses or future presidents. Iran knows this. They negotiated the 2015 deal. They watched Trump tear it up in 2018. The guarantee is constitutionally impossible, and Tehran knows it. So why demand it? Because impossible demands are not negotiating positions. They are exhibits in a case being built for a global audience. Dennis Ross, the former Middle East envoy, told PBS NewsHour that Iran's proposal was designed to be rejected, that Tehran is buying time to rebuild air defenses and resupply Hezbollah, not negotiating in good faith. He is probably right. But here is the part most analysts are stopping short of saying. America's proposal was also designed to be rejected. Rollback enrichment to 20%, impose a 5-year missile freeze, cut Hezbollah funding by 75%, withdraw the IRGC from Syria within 6 months. Each demand is individually defensible. Together, they form a package no Iranian government could accept and survive politically at home. Washington knows that. When both sides construct offers the other cannot say yes to, the negotiation is not failing, it is performing. And both sides are building the paper trail that justifies resuming hostilities. This is not diplomacy. This is mutual alibi construction. Before we go further, this analysis updates daily, not weekly. If you want to track how this unfolds in real time, the subscribe button is right there. Now, here's the development that is getting far less attention than the ceasefire rejection itself. And it may matter more. Iran published revised maritime maps this weekend, extending its claimed territorial waters deeper into the Strait of Hormuz by 4 nautical miles. On the surface, that sounds like a cartographic footnote. Here is what it actually means. 20% of the world's oil supply transits the Strait of Hormuz every single day, 21 million barrels. The strait is 21 miles wide at its narrowest. The navigable shipping channels occupy roughly 6 miles, split into 2 lanes with a buffer between them. With Iran's new claims, those lanes now fall partially inside what Tehran considers its sovereign waters. That gives Iran legal pretext under its own revised maritime law to stop, board, and inspect any vessel transiting the strait. It does not need to fire a weapon. It needs to create enough legal and military ambiguity that shipping companies reroute, insurance rates spike, and oil markets price in disruption. That is already happening. Lloyd's of London reports tanker insurance rates through the strait have tripled in 1 week. Major shipping lines have begun rerouting. The U.S. Fifth Fleet reported Iranian fast boats approaching within 6 nautical miles of commercial shipping lanes twice last week. Not yet threatening maneuvers, but closer than agreed boundaries. The maritime maps are not cartography. They are a threat rendered in ink. And the military repositioning confirms it. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group has transited the Suez Canal. It will reach the Gulf of Oman by May 15th, 2 days before the ceasefire expires. The USS Eisenhower Strike Group is already on station, 2 carrier groups within range of Iran before the deadline. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told the Senate Armed Services Committee Tuesday that Iran is probing to see if the United States will enforce the ceasefire. When asked directly whether Washington would respond to the redrawn maritime boundaries, he said, "We are evaluating all options." Pentagon language for the decision has not been made publicly, but the preparations have been made quietly. On the Iranian side, commercial satellite imagery from Planet Labs shows increased activity at missile bases near Shiraz and Kerman. The Revolutionary Guard Corps has moved mobile missile launchers out of hardened shelters and dispersed them to secondary positions, standard pre-strike procedure. It makes launchers harder to target and signals readiness to fire. You do not transit a carrier through the Suez Canal as a precaution. You do not disperse mobile launchers as a negotiating gesture. Both governments are preparing for what happens after May 17th, and that preparation is its own message. Each side is telling the other, we are ready. The question is whether ready means ready to fight or ready to call the other's bluff. The first round of fighting destroyed 70% of Iran's refining capacity across 14 major facilities. That is what forced Tehran to the table, not diplomacy. Destroyed infrastructure. If the ceasefire collapses and strikes resume, the target list expands. The remaining 30% of refining capacity. Then the electrical grid, water treatment, transportation networks. That is not a military campaign anymore. That is the systematic dismantling of the infrastructure that keeps 88 million people alive. The humanitarian consequences cascade. Refugee flows into neighboring Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey, oil markets in freefall. Goldman Sachs has already told clients to expect oil above $100 per barrel if the ceasefire collapses and the strait closes. $100 oil inside an American election cycle. You cannot run a maximum pressure campaign against Iran and simultaneously promise low gas prices. Those two objectives are on a collision course, and May 17th may be the date they collide. There is one piece of this I want to be transparent about because it matters. I do not know whether the Trump administration wants a deal or wants a war. The signals genuinely contradict each other. The Rose Garden statement used war language. But Brett McGurk, the chief negotiator, is still in the room in Muscat. You do not keep your lead negotiator at the table if the decision has already been made, unless you are keeping him there specifically to preserve the appearance that you tried. I also do not know whether Iran's 11-hour Security Council session reflects a government that has decided to stall or one that is genuinely divided internally. Governments that have already decided do not deliberate for 11 hours. They deliberate for 2 and then issue a prepared statement. 11 hours suggests a real internal fracture, a peace faction and a war faction, and a counterproposal that reflects the uneasy compromise between them rather than a unified strategy of rejection. That possibility matters, because if there is a faction inside Tehran that wants a deal, there may still be a door. Whether anyone walks through it in 6 days is the question that the next week will answer. Every instrument is reading the same. 2 carrier strike groups arriving before the deadline, shipping companies rerouting, maritime boundaries redrawn, missile launchers dispersed, oil at $89 and climbing, ceasefire talks still technically alive but functionally frozen. I have covered moments where every instrument pointed toward escalation, and the carriers sailed home. That is possible here. But I have also covered Iraq in 2003 and Libya in 2011. I know what it looks like when impossible demands meet failed negotiations, meet military repositioning on a calendar everyone can read. I hope May 18th is a quiet morning. I am preparing for the possibility that it is not. Here is what I want you to do right now. Scroll down and leave your assessment, not your hope, your actual analysis. Based on the military movements, the economic signals, the positions on the table, and the history of how these situations resolve, does this ceasefire survive May 17th? Date your comment. On May 18th, we will all know who read this correctly. If this breakdown gave you something the headlines did not, a clearer framework, a sharper picture of what is actually at stake, hit the like button. One tap is what carries this to people who need to see it. And if you are not already subscribed, this is the moment. This story moves fast. We cover it every day, not once a week. I will be here tomorrow with whatever the next 24 hours bring.